It's here, it's hot off the presses. The new Creation Club releases for Skyrim are now downloadable. As I did with Fallout 4, I did buy all of these and I will be showing you them now in this video. There's 8 new things to come out with this. There's really not a ton to say here. I mean, obviously you have to buy these points in packs. If you guys do get the 2500 point pack, it'll actually cover everything right now, even the survival mode, all that's free. And one other disclaimer is going to this video, the way I'm going to structure it, I'll introduce the mod, I'll tell you what it's about, how to get it, but I'm not really going to include much of my opinions. There's going to be a separate video for that. This is just meant to be kind of an overview, a catalog of the mods available. Even further, every single mod in this does offer a quest. A lot of these quests are very basic, so unless the quest is notable, I probably won't go very detailed on it. But that's not to say the quest doesn't take a lot of time or it's not something to do. It's just for the sake of not being repetitive. So first is that survival mode. Basically what this is going to do is add in new survival components into Skyrim. It's going to be free for the first week, so if you are on any platform and you get this before October 10th, it will be totally free to own, and then it will be 500 credits. That's notable because this is different than the 800 credits it was in the beta variant. They actually changed this pricing, although technically it was never possible to buy this. In 1 week it will be 500 rather than 800 credits. It's going to add things like hunger, warmth ratings. So now the armor you're wearing or the clothes you're wearing do have a certain amount of warmth, and then traveling around in cold regions will actually have debuffs to you. It basically creates a big balance throughout the game. You need to sleep and eat daily to make sure you do have the maximum amount of stamina, health regen, and of course magicka. Even further, there's some miscellaneous changes like the need to sleep to level up, so if you want to spend those perk points, and even beyond all that, there is no fast travel. I made a few videos on this. If you guys want to see those, that would be a lot more in depth. It's just a little bit too large of a mod for the format of this video. Then we do have the Divine Crusader. Basically, this is going to add in 2 new armors as well as 2 new weapons. That also including a shield along with it. In order to get this armor and weapons, you're going to have a quest taking you to a location where you have to kill 2 bandits. There's going to be a few other miscellaneous bandits, but those 2 main ones are going to be wearing this armor. They're going to be thieves, implying that it was stolen from some other location. So again, there's going to be 2 sets of this armor. A heavy variant. This obviously looks a little bit tankier than the light variant. It has a slightly higher rating as well as a slightly higher weight, which is natural. And even further, all the pieces do have their own special enchantment. They're all pretty standard defensive enchantments, nothing that is particularly worth mentioning. Then we do have 2 weapon types, a sword as well as a mace. Basically what these things are going to be all about is they're going to inflict fire damage to your enemy. The mace is going to do slightly more damage, while the sword does slightly less damage for whatever reason. I'm not really sure why that is. I would actually say the mace is all around just a better weapon. But then moving on, we also do have the light variant of this armor. This is going to be much more open and actually have a lot more fur incorporated into it. One thing to note about these 2 different armors is the light armor actually has a shield that only goes on your back. Unless that's currently a glitch, for me it wasn't an equipable shield, it was just something that sat on your back, while the other armor had your traditional shield. You could technically use both of these at the same time, which is pretty interesting because you got a lot of armor from both of them. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. The armor is really high quality, I have to say that about this. Like, the actual texture detail here is pretty noticeable, and it definitely stood out to me even when compared to some of the ones that are downloadable right now as free mods. Then we have Plague of the Dead. Basically, what this is going to do is bring zombies into Skyrim. You're going to have a quest where you have to go find these necromancers that were trying to spawn in their own zombies. As you do arrive at the site, you quickly realize these zombies must have killed these guys, and you can find their journal telling them how they wanted to take over the world by creating a zombie army. Obviously, they didn't get very far because they're dead. Then you do get 2 spell tomes. Both of these are going to give you the ability to conjure 1 zombie at once. One of these is just going to basically have more stats than the other one. As far as the actual zombie goes, they do have a unique drop known as Mort Flesh, which is semi-useful. At the same time, they do kind of just make that one noise you keep hearing over and over again. It gets a little bit repetitive, and they don't have any other noises. And even further, this mod's meant to have this ability where these things will spawn naturally in the world. Personally, I couldn't get that to work. I saw a few other YouTubers having problems with this, but I actually think there's almost a bit of false advertising here. It does mention how you can beat back the zombie hordes, and that's definitely not true. Apparently, sometimes you will get a quest to go to another kind of spell location where you'll find a few zombies trying to be summoned there. But there's no hordes. It's not like you run through the fields and see zombies coming out of the ground or anything like that. I just really felt like that was an important distinction. Unless I'm totally missing something here, this is a rare occurrence. I waited a number of days in-game, and actually about 20 to 30 minutes in real-life time, and I traveled all over. I just couldn't find these guys or recreate them, and I got no quests. But either way, apparently, again, the way it's going to work is you'll find a location pretty much exactly the same as the one you do find when you originally get this quest. You'll just get a little quest marker, go there, kill some zombies, and move on. Then we do have CRUSADER, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that's okay. It's going to be a new Claymore style sword that you can get also by doing a quest. Something to note about this quest, it's particularly long. Like, this is a tough sword to get. I did all these quests on the same characters. A lot of them are just kind of rehabitating dungeons that you otherwise might have cleared. This dungeon, despite being cleared by me in the past, had a lot of high level enemies in it. It definitely was a challenge to get this weapon more so than anything else in Creation Club. I just really want to stress that. The enchantment on the sword is going to give you 15% fire resist, 10% absorb magic, and it's actually going to slow health regen during combat. It's a cool sword. Outside of the original quest to get it and the special abilities it has, though, it is kind of just a standard two-handed sword that does 38 damage by default. Then we do have Ruin's Edge, a pretty noticeable and unique bow. This is going to have another dungeon quest. The enemies here are much lower level. Go through the dungeon, kill the enemies, get the bow. What this bow does is actually give you a unique enchant based on the arrow fired. This is going to be picking from a pool of 5 enchantments, that being Frost, Demoralize, Frenzy, Drain Magicka, or Paralyze. So if I wasn't clear with that, basically as you fire each arrow, one of those 5 things will be applied to that enemy, and it's going to be totally random each time you fire an arrow. There's no way of selecting this. There's nothing like that you could do. You have no control over it. It also, of course, has a pretty distinctively unique design. You see that big eye staring back at you, but I think hopefully the video will speak for itself in that regard. Then we do have the Staff of SHEOGORATH. Again, probably something I'm pronouncing wrong, but that's okay. This actually comes with 2 weapons, one being the Fork of Horripilation. You're going to get this fork in the first part of the quest, then have to kill 2 enemies with it to get the items to craft the staff. Despite it having a pretty unique enchantment in some of the previous Elder Scrolls DLC, in this one it's just a normal standard weapon that does 2 damage and weighs 6. On the other hand, after crafting your staff, it does have a much more unique ability to it. Basically, as you fire the staff, it's going to paralyze all paralyzable enemies around you. This is going to be most enemies. Obviously there's a few that are immune to paralysis, but that's not really changed by this at all. That's really it. One of the things that is going to be distinctively lacking is the sound effects associated with it. When we saw this in previous Elder Scrolls, it did have a kind of shout that said stop and then release. That is not present here. It obviously also does have another distinctive look with that big eye on the end. And also wanted to note, you obviously do get 2 ingredients and combine them. The staff crafting table is behind a locked door, so you can't just travel this location and get the weapon. You have to have actually done some of the DLC to get behind that door. Then we do have STENDARR'S hammer. This is probably the simplest one of them all. You sneak into the Dwemer Museum and literally just pick it up, hopefully not getting caught in the process. It's meant to be a very heavy and bulky hammer, but one thing to note is that actually this too has a new effect in Skyrim. In the older Elder Scrolls game, this would deplete your stamina by 1 to 20 with every single swing, but at the same time each swing did increasing damage. So if you had a character spec'd out to stamina, you would be able to do a lot of damage with this in consecutive swings. Unless this is written weirdly, the description for this in Skyrim is going to be damages the target for 22 points, depletes 20 stamina from wielder per hit. So unless I'm totally wrong and these actually change as you do continue to swing, which I don't believe it does, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, these are now just 2 fixed numbers. So it's going to do 22 points of damage to your enemy in addition to the 42 it does naturally, and then just deplete a flat 20 stamina. Maybe now it's kind of going off some other stat that you have internally, maybe a skill tree or something like that, I don't know. But again, a bulky hammer weighing 100 weight, and with once a pretty interesting enchantment. Then we do have the Arcane Arrow Pack. This is going to add in 6 new and unique arrow types along with unique quivers to go along with them. The first 3 are very similar. I'm only going to show you the quiver of the first one, that being the ice arrows. As you fire these, they will actually freeze enemies on hit. Then you do have a fire arrow doing the same thing, except this time it's a burst of fire, probably one of the most powerful out of the bunch. And then finally an electric arrow, again having the same effect, this time with electric damage. Then we move over into some of the more unique arrows, that being first the bone arrows. This is not to be confused with dragon bone. These are simply called bone. Obviously the quiver is a dragon skull. There's no unique effect or enchantment on these. They just do a pretty good amount of damage, and obviously they look decently unique. They're one of the highest damaging arrows in the game though, so they're definitely powerful in that regard. Then you do have the soul gem arrows. What these are going to do is as you do finish off an enemy, it'll actually put them in your soul gem that is hopefully in your inventory. It's a pretty straightforward arrow. It will have varying degrees of usefulness depending on how your character is built. But then finally, without a doubt, the most interesting by far are going to be the telekinesis arrows. The way these are going to work is as you fire each arrow, it'll be frozen in air, but then you actually learn a spell that you can cast like a shout. Is going to be bound to your Z key, which will release all of these arrows at once. So you can place a bunch of these depending on where you are. Either you want to set a trap, maybe you want to quickly take down a single enemy. These are really freaking cool. There's a lot of practical and less than practical implementations of these. I would actually say this might be the most worth it out of the bunch. It's only 150 points, which is fairly cheap. If you want to buy one of the other things, you'll probably just have enough points left over. And although there are some mods that do very similar things, there's still a little bit of fun to be had here. Then last but not least, we do have Arcane accessories. Interesting naming. More or less, this is going to be a spell pack. It's going to have 2 new robes that are super basic, so basically I'm not even going to show you them. They're just normal robes with different enchantments, and then a bunch of new spells. Some of these spells, as you will find, are kind of grouped together. They're just varying degrees of damage, and of course they do hold different names also. The first is going to be a drain spell. Basically there's 3 levels here. It's going to steal life from one of your enemies, choking it out of them, or draining it out of them, starving it out of them, whatever name they decide to go with. But at the end of the day, it's going to take HP from your enemy and give it to you. Then we do have the elemental spells. These are going to be bolt, blast, burst, flare. This is going to fire an elemental blast, dealing fire and electric damage, and basically drain the stamina of whoever it hits. Again, depending on which one you're using, it'll do more or less damage. Then we do have Fenric's Welcome. What this is going to do is make you invisible for a short while, but also allow you to unlock expert or lower doors or chests or whatever it is. You don't have to actually lockpick at all. You could just use this spell, and you could then select this option as you are opening the door to get into whatever location you want to. Then we have Orum's Aquatic Escape. This is going to make you invisible for 15 seconds, allow you to breathe underwater for 15 seconds also, and then finally give you improved night vision for 15 seconds. There's a lot of practical implementations of this one. Obviously it's kind of situational, but it's kind of good to have there in case you really need to get out of somewhere fast and you're by a big body of water. Then we have Mara's Wrath. Basically what this is going to do is make it so you kind of engulf yourself in flames for 30 seconds. Enemies around you in melee range, is how this describes it, will take 16 points of fire damage, and this will actually make undead under the level of 26 flee for 30 seconds. So basically you turn to the Human Torch for 30 seconds. Pretty much the simplest way to put this. Then we have the Paralysis Room. What this is going to do is basically allow you to lay a little rune trap on the ground, and then as an enemy steps on it, it'll immobilize them for 8 seconds. This thing actually explodes, so it can immobilize multiple enemies at once. I gotta say, it's actually one of the cooler ones. The Pride of Hirsch Stang is allow you to spawn a bear in for 60 seconds, and you can resist 50% of frost damage, as well as your health regenerates 50% faster, both of those also for 60 seconds. It's pretty straightforward, it's kind of cool. And then last but not least, we have 3 unrelenting spells, that being Flame, Freezing, and Storms, aka Fire, Ice, and of course Electric. Basically it's going to allow you to fire these little kind of balls of whatever element you are using, but then where it actually hits the ground, it creates kind of a danger spot. It'll shoot flames up to the air, make it a freeze spot to slow down enemies or just inflict electric damage. It's kind of interesting, kind of hard to use, but you can kind of rapid fire this thing at a bunch of enemies to deal a lot of damage when you hit them, and then damage over time as they walk over it. So that's it. That's pretty much gonna wrap it up for this video. I'm tired. It took a while to record all this. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like or a comment. Hopefully you found this informative. If you want my opinions and kind of a review of this, you could look forward to that tomorrow. But yeah, again, that's pretty much it. As always, I thank you guys for watching. I do hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.